I believe that true communication means being 100% available for your child and to really listen to them and see them as individuals.
Welcome to the Water Prairie Chronicles, a podcast created for special needs parents and those who want to support them. I'm your host, Tonya Wallum, and I'm glad you're here. In this episode, I'm chatting with Kathy Bowers about how to unlock a stronger bond with your child. Kathy is the founder of Life Change Coaching, where she provides guidance to parents seeking to enhance their communication skills and strengthen their relationships with their children. Today, she'll be sharing practical strategies to help communication and relationships with your children. If you have a little one who doesn't listen or a moody teen who ignores you, Kathy has some tips to share that you may find enlightening. This episode is sponsored by the Water Prairie Etsy shop, where you can find Tales in a Tote story kits for young children and printable storytelling journals and activity books to help encourage older children to enjoy writing their own stories. Check out the shop at waterprairie.etsy.com and be sure to sign up for the Water Prairie newsletter for special Etsy promo codes. Now, let's get back to the episode. Kathy, I appreciate you being with us today.
Thank you, Tonya. It's a great pleasure to be here.
Kathy is a parenting, teen, and life coach. And I say it that way because it's my understanding, she's going to tell us more, but it's my understanding that she works with both parents and teens separately and together, but then also does life coaching. Am I completely off on that, or do I have this correct?
A little bit.
A little bit? Okay. Clear it up for me.
I do mentoring with the teens and the parents together online, because obviously teens want to have their say. And if there's difficulties, then the parents will obviously be there as well. So we do like in the room scenario where I'm just making it sort of flow and giving everyone the opportunity to listen to one another and to express what they're having trouble with, with between parent and teen to parent. So that's what I do. And then I work individually online with parents, but not together. Parents, individual parents, because obviously, although you're a parent, you're two different human beings and you have your different viewpoints and things. And the last thing I want is a clash going on. So it's up to the parents to decide if they want to split this. I offer 6 sessions, so it's whether they want to split the 6 sessions into 3 or take six each. It's up to them, really. And then with individuals, obviously I work with the individual online again, and that's on around specific goals they wish to achieve, whether it's a personal development goal or something to do with maybe setting up a business or just anything really that comes into their head that they want to achieve.
So one of the things that stood out for me when you first reached out was when I checked out your website, you had a summary on there that said that you work with parents who are having communication and parenting difficulties with their children. And it sounds like from what you're saying, how you're working with them together.
Yes.
And it's a topic that we haven't brought to the podcast before. And I think it really is important that we do look at communication. A lot of times we lean toward talking about parents trying to communicate with the school, things like that. And we may even talk about behavior sometimes with our children, but we haven't broken it down to the communication itself. And I think this is really important for us to dig into a little bit. And I'm really looking forward to hearing some of the information that you're going to share with us. And those that are listening, I'd love to hear your feedback as you start learning from this episode. Even let us know if you try out some of the things that we're going to talk about, and if you see any changes. So when I started thinking about communication, I was trying to think, what have I heard to kind of get us started? And I came across the quote by Emma Thompson. Those that may not be familiar with it, she wrote Sense and Sensibility in 1995, I think is when that came out. And the quote that I saw from her was, "Any problem, big or small, within a family always seems to start with bad communication. Someone isn't listening." And what I liked on that was, how many times do we, especially as parents, we have things we have to say, and Junior is watching TV or something, and he hears nothing that we say, and we say it 3 or 4 times, so we're getting more heated, and they never heard a word of what we said. So I thought maybe we'd launch with a quote to let us see that it isn't just us, that sometimes there are others who recognize that communication can be a pretty big thing.
Well, I mean, communication is for everybody, adults included. You know, how we talk to one another. It's not just children, but obviously, when we're a parent, we have to be specifically aware of how we communicate with our children. But 90% of communication is our physical. You know, it's not vocal. It's our physical well-being and how we respond like that. It's our features on our face. It's whether we give eye contact or we don't. And then it's our voice, but it's not just our words, it's our tone of voice as well. So it's
Mm.
all taken in. So it's a lot to actually really take in and realize. And as adults, I don't think we realize how we respond to our children when things are annoying. You know, we don't even have to open our mouths. The children will see, oh, here they come.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I think too, we're talking about the parent-child relationship in that one, but even mom and dad, how do we talk to each
Mhm.
other? And our children are absorbing all of that and watching.
Yes.
They're learning their own communication skills as they observe all of this.
We're meant to be offering guidance, and it has to be positive guidance we're giving them. And we do forget because children don't stand up to our height, you know, we sometimes don't even know they're in the room sometimes, you know, and they're absorbing it. I mean, their brain, you know, they're like a sponge. They want to get in. And it's only when you suddenly see your children mimicking you or making an expression or saying a word that you would say, you think, hold on a minute, this little person's really picked it up. And it's and
Well,
famous ones are the swear words. You know, we don't
I
swear.
was
And
gonna
then
say,
suddenly this 2-year-old or 3-year-old comes out with a swear word. You think, where they learned it from? Oh, they've got it from school. Well, hold on, they don't go to school yet. You know,
right,
it's,
right. Well,
it's
and
quite
how many
funny.
times does the parent say, "Where did you learn that?" And
Yeah.
because you don't necessarily see it in yourself. It's,
Mm.
yeah. That's I've seen that a lot of times as I've just talked with people in the community, and the look of the parent's face whenever it happens is
Because they get
total
embarrassed,
shock.
don't they? They think, whoops.
Well, a lot of times too, we're so careful of protecting our children with the media and what they're exposed to, but we may forget that they're exposed to us as well, and what
Yes.
are we showing to them? You're right. With my children, I knew a lot of times when they were young, I was working with different groups of adults and they would be with me at times. And so I needed to do the job that I was doing and finish the conversation with a parent or with someone else. And with my kids, what they want, it's now. It's,
Mhm.
they wanted to jump in. So we started what I always called the interrupt rule. And they had to put their hand on my arm or my leg just
Yes.
to let me know they were there, and then they knew in turn that I would stop when there was a moment to see what they wanted, so they didn't have to wait for the whole adult conversation to end before I could pay attention to them, but that was something that I always required of them, but did I always do that for them if they were in the middle of something to give them
Mm.
that warning? No, I didn't. A lot of times, I would
No.
expect them to jump right as soon as I'd say something, so we don't always have that balance.
Yeah, this is what's quite common with parents when, and I did quite a few sort of tests with my parents. I sort of said, it was quite funny. We had this day when they came in when I was in the nursery, and I said, right, well, parents come in. And they went, okay. So I said, now I'm going to sit you down at different tables. I think there's 4 to each table. And I said, I'm going to give you some artwork and I'm going to expect you to do it. Okay. So then, all right, that's fine. So, what they weren't expecting though was what I did was I gave instructions to some of them, then I gave part instructions to others, like whispering, telling them what to do. And then to others, I didn't give any instructions. So they had these bits of newspaper and things on the table, or they didn't have all the equipment. Like they might needed, they were meant to be making a tree out of a newspaper, and so they
Okay.
needed the tree, the scissors, and some sellotape or something. But on some of the tables, I didn't give them the scissors, or I didn't put the tape out, so they didn't know. So it was quite funny. So anyway, I said, right, you're going to be time for this now. Get on and do it. And then what I did as well was I would come up to a parent and wouldn't say anything, and I'd just get hold of them and move them to another table or move them and sit them out. And we did this, and it was quite funny because they were very sort of disorientated. They didn't know what was going on, and they hadn't got a clue. Some of them were trying to do the tree quite well, and then others were looking at the table as if to say, what are they doing, trying to copy? And then when we stopped it, I said, right, now tell me how you felt. And the hands were going up. They said, well, I was completely lost. I didn't know what I was meant to be doing because you didn't tell any of us on the table what we were meant to be, building. And then someone else said, well, we didn't have the equipment to do. You told us to do this, but we didn't have the sellotape or the scissors. And then someone else said, well, I got very upset. I said, why did you get upset? Because you took me away. And I thought, what have I done? She actually said, have I been naughty? It was really funny. And I said, these are things that you do to your children every day. You don't explain, or you jump in and you don't give them time. And one of the things you do, which is so common, I mean, I did it as well with my children. You give an instruction, but you don't give one instruction in the sentence. You give them 4 or 5. I
Right.
want you to get your shoes on, put your coat there, do this. And then you don't understand why your child is just not done it, and they're sitting there. You think they're being, argumentative or rude to you or defiant to you. But what they're doing is you've told them something and they've just trying to work out in their brain, right, what do I need to do first? But then you're shouting at them because they haven't done it immediately. You're expecting it to be that instant done. And I like with parents, I've said to you, if I ask you to do something, we're discussing something, and I was to say to you, right, I want you to do this and this, and then I shout, well, why haven't you done it yet?
Yeah.
How do you feel? And they say, well, I'd get angry because I couldn't do it at that time. Who the hell do you think you are telling me to do it immediately? And I said, well, nothing is done immediately. You have to take it and absorb.
You have to
And
process it.
depending on your instructions, if it's not clear in the first place, you're lost.
Well, then you also have our children who can't retain that many things at one time.
Yeah.
And they know there were shoes somewhere in that in that sentence, but that's about it.
So you have to keep it simple.
Right.
A simple instruction is short and simple. Like go and get your shoes, go and get your coat. So you're telling them. It's no good saying, "Where are your shoes?" and that's it. They will think, "Well, where are my shoes?" That's not what you're asking them. You might be asking them to go and put your shoes on, but you have to tell them what you want. It's like if you're at work and your boss tells you to do something, they have to give you an instruction of what you need to do for your job to do it.
It's one of those things that as you're saying, if you put it into your own life, you understand.
Mhm.
It's,
Mhm.
maybe maybe even we need more time because we're older now. I'm not sure. There there are a lot of things inside our head because 'cause we're thinking about where are the keys, which is why half the time we're upset that they don't have their shoes on yet because we just found the keys. Now we're ready to go.
And they've lost the shoes. One shoe's under
Right.
the bed and one's
When in the process, we probably asked them to help us find the keys because we assume that they must have moved them or something. So that kind of answers one of the questions I was gonna ask you. What are some of the challenges that parents face when we're trying to communicate with our kids? That I think that's probably especially as young as some of our parents have toddlers even. Those are very real things. We're trying to find where the shoe is, where
Yes,
one's
yeah.
upstairs, one's downstairs. But what are some of the other challenges that parents might face when they're talking to their kids? Maybe thinking about our older kids. You work with teens a lot.
It's how you speak to your children and as I said, your body language and your tone, and especially with teens, we're inclined to come over as nagging them, you know, uh, or challenging them or putting your it's always, why haven't you done this or where can you do it, rather than actually asking, can I need some help here, can you help me with something, sort of and it's a two-way conversation, isn't it? That's what you're meant to be having, a two-way conversation calmly. And if you're challenging it and your voice sounds aggressive, or it sounds sort of derogatory, or speaking down to them, you're going to get their back up. So you have to really, it's like putting the thought that they've thought it rather than you're telling them, but you have to be very sort of cunning in a way, I suppose, to sort of put the suggestion there, but then let them think that they've thought of it and they're doing it. So it's a question of, your phrasing and your terminology is very important when you're communicating with teens.
As you're talking about that, I'm thinking of when my son more than my daughter, um, he was one that would well, he has ADHD, he has reasons that sometimes the teachers would misunderstand what he was doing, and I would always challenge the teacher, instead of assuming what you think is happening, ask the question, "What were you thinking?" But not in the tone of voice of, "What were you thinking?" But 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 what was the reason behind what you just did? And and I would challenge them because you'd be surprised what was really happening. A lot of times it was totally opposite of what you assumed it was, and it really wasn't a bad behavior that you were expecting it to be. It was actually a very thoughtful gesture that went awry somewhere in the process of following through with it.
Yes, yeah.
But that I think as parents sometimes we'll do the same thing. We respond quickly assuming something that really isn't there, and if we can hear what our kids are saying.
And that's why you have to ask them. You ask them, have they understood? Is there anything that they're struggling with? Is there anything that you can help them do, make it easier for them to do whatever you've asked them to do? So it's this gentle, supportive communication that you're letting them know you've got their back, you've got their best interests at heart, and you say to them, I really care, I love you to bits, and I want the best for you. So let me help you. But sometimes we get it wrong, and that's when we need to say, look, I've really messed up here, I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have spoken to you like that. That was totally unnecessary, and you didn't deserve that. Even though I'm stressed and tired, that still doesn't excuse the fact that you got the brunt of it. But I'm sorry, but
When what better lesson can we show our children whenever we say that to them? Because we all have moments of passion that are not in tune with what it should be. And, I mean, our kids have it to us, especially as they're getting older and have those hormonal changes where they may snap back at us.
also they might have a bad day at school. They might have a clash with a friend. They might be thinking, like, because they're, so many different things going on. They might be thinking about a girl or a boy, or anxious about that. I mean, what surprises me nowadays, which when I was a teenager, I didn't think like this at all. And I'm thinking it must be, I don't know whether it's social media has anything to do with it, but the kids don't just worry about maybe what's going on for them at school or at home, or if they getting a girlfriend or a boyfriend. They're now worrying at a very tender age about, how will I earn enough money to live, to buy clothes, to buy a car? Will I be able to learn to drive a car? How will I be able to earn enough to get married if that's what I want, and have a family and raise a family? And they've got all these thoughts, and you're thinking, God, you're just teens. You haven't even got any of that yet. Why are you worrying about it? But they are. They really are worrying about all this stuff. And you think you're putting more stress on your shoulders of something that's not happening maybe 10 years from now.
Yeah, that's interesting that you are starting to see that more.
But I think also because they're living in families who are struggling, maybe that's what it is. Mum and dad are struggling with finances to keep a roof over their head. We've got this thing with all the heating bills, haven't we now? The cost of living, all that, putting food on your table. You hear it now, and the kids are aware of it. that mum and dad are thinking, well, if I put the heating money, on the meter for the heating, I might not have enough food. And they see one of the parents not eating as much food and giving it to the kids. So it's all this. It's a horrible way, but they're watching, like I was telling you, and they're seeing this all, and they're seeing the parents struggle. And maybe that goes on, well, if they're doing it, this is my mum and dad, and they should know how to handle money, and they're older than me, and they have, they've been working for years and doing this. So if they're struggling, what hope is there for me?
I wanna get back a little bit to thinking of our audience where many of them have young children
Yes.
with disabilities and special needs, but they also have other children who don't have disabilities or special needs. So everything we're talking about is going to address someone within their family at some point along the line there.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
vital. I mean, the parents are all individuals. Their children are individuals, so they're not, none of them are the same as the other one. So
Right.
you have to really get to know your children, whether they've got a disability or not. If they have a disability, then yes, you have to understand what that disability is and the impact it has on how they communicate, how they receive information, and how they can respond to information. And if they've got a physical disability, how does that affect them in, movement or whatever, and pain? And their responses, are they in pain? Do they get angry? Do they get
Mm,
frustration if they can't vocalize? Because that's quite common. If they've got a hearing problem and you don't necessarily know your child is deaf or have got something wrong that needs, the grommets, and if they can't hear what you're saying and they're getting frustrated and they're kicking out, you think, oh, what's going on here? But you have to look deeper. But if you know your child, if you really observe and look and monitor, you have to look for what they're not saying as well as
mm,
verbally, how they're communicating. And so every child is different, and you've got to obviously consider their, not only their personalities, but their age and their ability. So you don't have a full grown conversation. You can have a good conversation with a teenager, but you can't do that with a 2 year old or a 3 year old. They're going, what? Because they're short, they've got attention span is so like a couple of minutes and that's it. They're gone, so
right.
and so you're wasting your time and you're just getting worn out sort of doing it. So you have to really make sure that you tone your conversations, your communication. Always be present when you're talking to them. Always show that you're listening. And this is what we talk about, active listening, which is really difficult to do. But it's emptying your head of anything else, any of that clutter talking. Because when, for example, if I'm talking to you, you might be in your head thinking, oh, I'm thinking about this next answer I'm going to
Right.
ask
Right.
Kathy. And so you're not actually taking 100% what I'm saying. And we do this all the time. And when I was learning to do my coaching, the coach said, no, you're not listening 100%, Kathy. I said, what? He said, you have to empty that all out and you have to actually hear 100% what that person's saying, and don't come in to finish their sentence, or don't come in and give them a bit of space, because they might not have finished what you think they've finished, might not have finished what you thought they'd said. And therefore, you're cutting off something which could have been continued.
Mm,
So it's vital to do that, and to really be aware, but also to not involve your child. Don't treat your child like a mini adult. Don't treat them like your friend. I've had so many parents say, but I don't want to do this with them. I don't want to tell them off because I want them to love me. I want them to like me, or I see them as my friend. Yeah. So it's vital that you really make sure that you don't keep any adult conversation. You keep it away from your children, especially
mm,
if you're going through anything. Could be arguments, financial problems, relationship breakups. You don't want them to be piggy in the middle. You don't want them to hear things because it's frightening. and you don't want them to feel that they have to choose between mum or dad, or two mums
Right.
or two dads, because they're your kids. They're not into all this stuff. They just love you, both of you, and that's all they want. But it's so easy for us adults, we forget. We might be on the phone to someone talking and slagging off the other person, and our child's right there hearing everything we're saying. And that's, so we have to really think about, we don't want negative communication in any form of way. We have to be positive 100%. And same with our guidance, how we offer them, it has to be 100%.
You mentioned active listening. The and earlier you were talking about how we communicate with more than just our words, with our facial expressions, with our body expressions and all. And I'm just as guilty as the next person, where if I'm in the middle of something and someone from the family walks in while I'm working on it, I may not hear everything that they're saying. I try to catch on to as much as I can, but my brain is, even if I turn my back on what I'm working on, my brain is still there, and it's hard to pull the plug sometimes. But with active listening, I've always heard it to be, repeating back some of the things to show that you are engaged with it. But are there ways that our body language also is active listening too? Are there
Well, yes, because it's how we're open. I mean, it's like if we're sitting there and we're all tight, or we're not looking, especially your eye contact, you have to if you're giving eye contact, they're showing you, you're seeing that person, you're saying, I'm seeing you, I'm listening. And then you say to them, uh, either repeat back, or you can say, am I right in understanding that you've said this? Have I heard this correctly? So you ask them, because it's always good to check in, because you might have interpreted it wrongly. And that's how arguments and fights and sulks start, because someone said something and then you've interpreted it completely different. So if you check in with them, rather than get like, oh, they've said that, check in first, because then they'll say, no, I didn't mean that. This is what I meant. Because again, it's your frame of mind, how you're feeling at that particular time of the day. You might be oversensitive and you just take something, you think that's a criticism, and that person might not be wanting to criticize you. They might just be giving you a suggestion or something, but in that form of the way, you've just taken it that particular time as a criticism.
So we spoke about how we don't want our children to hear those adult conversations because they're not part of that. They're not ready for those. Well, they really should not be part of that conversation. But what about when we're communicating with our children? And in all honesty, I think every parent at some point has had a harsher word. They may not yell, but they may have a sterner word or something that they meant to be. It may not have the situation may not have warranted that reaction that they had. And I say all the time that words carry a lot of weight. So as we're speaking to our children and speaking with our children, how can we help our children's self-esteem and their well-being be more positive? I mean, yes, we can always say positive, good things, but that's not what a parent's role is. Sometimes we do have to be negative in helping to correct. So how can we have a better
Get a balance. Well, what you should do is every day see something that the child has done. It can be really small, and you put that as, I've seen you've really been helpful. I didn't need to cool you down 2 or 3 times to get out of bed to come for breakfast. You did that yourself, or you remembered to go and clean your teeth, things like that. Or you've been on time, so that you're not going to miss your school bus. You're leaving the house. So really appreciate and say that. And then also things like, thank you, you really helped me carrying out that shopping out the car, because there was a lot of shopping, and you just saw that I needed that help, or you held the door open for me. And it's so nice, because everyone, adults as well, if someone gives you, like you're saying, positive praise, thank you, and using the manners and everything, you want to respond. It lifts you up, it brightens you
Mhm.
up, it
It
builds your
does.
self-esteem. But if you've got someone constantly pulling you down, picking picking you to bits all the time, or not saying anything, that's just as bad. You get some families where the parents do not say anything. They don't reward them. It's a blank. and that could be to do with mental health. It could be lots of different things, but that pulls your self-esteem down. You don't have that, you don't build up your self-esteem when someone's doing that, because you're not being seen as a complete person. You're not being seen holistically, and it's so important for parents to really see their children in all areas. You don't see just the bad behavior, because if you do, you can think, well, okay, this bad behavior is here, but why is that happening? Go back and see what's going on.
Mhm.
If they're little, might not be able to vocalize how they're feeling because they haven't got the words. So
Right.
they'll kick off, and you get lots of little ones who want their parents to play, and they come with a toy and they're playing. And this is sort of a B for me. Lots of parents seem to think because their children, little ones, can play quite contentedly with their toys, they don't think they need to get on their hands and knees and play with their children. They think leave it to them. But what you're helping them with their language, conversing, their
Mhm.
understanding. You're talking about colors, shape, so many different ways. And you're having fun with them. You're making them laugh and making them see that you really are interested in what they're doing. And if you've got a little baby, who wants to come up and he's got a toy and wants you to play, and you're on the phone like this and you're paying no attention, you go, fine, and you don't give any, and the baby might come along and whack you. I've seen this with mums I've been with, whack you with a toy. Not hard, but enough. And the parent goes, "Oh, why have you done that?" And I said, "Well, you've been on your phone. Your child's been trying to give you get you to engage with this toy. And it wasn't a hard whack, but they're just trying to get your attention to say it. But you've got some children, if you do not respond, they withdraw into themselves. And then the
Mhm.
parents say, "Oh, so and so is a very good boy. He never asks for anything." No, because he's learnt to self soothe and do anything. So
Mhm.
you have to be mindful. If that child is so quiet, why are they like that? And then you get the other ones who've learned the only way they get your attention is if they whack you with
Right.
something or hit their sibling. And in a way, you're rewarding their bad behavior by your responding, to it. And they're thinking, well, I'm getting something from you. Might not be the right thing, but I'm getting something from you. And then you have these households where everyone's screaming at each other. There are different levels of the thing. Come down here. It's just easier just to go up and say, "Can you come and help me?" And it starts from us adults doing it. But
Mhm.
we're the ones that's screaming most of the time.
So before we get to the end here, because I'm looking at our time, we've talked about some of this, but are there any other practical tips or exercises that parents can incorporate? You've given us a lot as we've gone through here, but is there anything else that you can think of that we didn't talk about?
The first thing that parents need to look at is what's happening for them first. What is getting in the way that they aren't necessarily being able to give 100% attention to their children and be available. And what's really common is most of us work now, whether we work at home, we work part time, full time, or we go into the office or do another job. If we're not happy in our job, which most of us, I mean, let's face it, most of us go to work because we need to pay for a mortgage, pay all the bills, and put food on the table. And if we're lucky, have a car and go on a holiday, and treat. But not many of us say, "I've got a great job. I love my job." Not many. But we've got bosses that bully us. We've got bosses that see you working and doing well. So they'll give you more stuff, more work, and you'll get
Mhm.
stressed. Now, stress is a good thing if you're doing a small amount, you've got a project and you think this is going to be a 4 or 5 week stress, but you're there because you've got the energy and your stress is driving you to do this, and you're coming up with these ideas. That's fine. But when you get the other form of stress, it just builds up on you, and you're overloaded, you're exhausted, you can't sleep, you can't do your job work, you constantly your head's getting clouded up with all this stuff, and you come home and you're taking your work home because you think, if I don't do this, I might get the sack or whatever. And then you're taking it in the evening, which impacts on how you see your kids and how you engage with your kids, because your moods are all over the place. And then on the weekend, you probably find you're doing it. And you've got to say to your boss, enough's enough. Be polite, just say, the amount of work you're giving me now, I can manage, I can complete, perfect. But if you give me something else, it's too much and it will affect the work that I'm doing well. So let me do this piece of work first. And if they're not willing to listen, then you'll have to either go to a union or go to the next person above and state, this is my contract. If your contract says you work Monday to Friday and you don't work nights and you don't work weekends or, evenings, then you have to stick by it, because the most important thing is your mental health, your physical health, which will impact on your whole relationship with your partner and your children. So you have to take care of that first, because family life is the most important thing. Your kids are your number one priority. You have to make sure that they are always first.
Mm.
And don't beat yourself up about your parenting. Learn from your mistakes. Try not to repeat them again. If you feel you need help, sorting out your own problems, go to your GP if it's mental health or wherever it is, first to get some help and support. There's so many agencies out there that will help you. But make sure that you're available for your children. You're consistent, 100% consistent with what you do, and you have your boundaries and your routines in place, and just enjoy being parents and know your kids are the most wonderful, best ever thing you can ever have in your life.
I agree. That's when we were talking earlier. That was what I kept thinking of when you were talking about the little one hitting mom with the toy to get the attention. It's like, get on the floor and play. If you can't get on the floor, bring them up to the sofa with you or something. Well, this season this is season 3 now. I have added something in that we're going to do, and I'm not sure what I'm going to call this. If it's going to be advice tags or what, but I have 3 statements that I'm going to read and have you repeat what I say and add an ending to it. The first one is short and easy. So it's, I believe that true communication means, and then you'll repeat that and finish the sentence with that. Okay.
I believe that true communication means being 100% available for your child and to really listen to them and see them as individuals.
Ooh, I like that. Okay, the second one, a memorable conversation I've had with my child taught me.
A memorable conversation I've had with my child or my children taught me that I have to be more patient and more resilient to my own what's going on for myself personally, that I mustn't have that impact on them. And that was when I was going through a divorce, and it was really hard. It was hard for them and it was hard for me.
Our children teach us so much, don't
Yes.
don't they? They're good reflections for us at times. All right, so this last one is a long one, so I sent you that one in one of the emails because I knew it was gonna be hard to remember it all. So the most effective way I found to connect with my child through communication is.
The most effective way I've found to communicate with my child is through play, to start off with when they were little, and then continuing that with board games and encouraging their hobbies and their enthusiasm and going on. So when they're teenagers, doing something with them, really being there to support whatever they want to try. They might try something for a little while and then they think, oh, I don't want to do that anymore. Well, fine, you've tried it, try something else.
Yeah. Well, Kathy, what is the best way for my listeners to get in touch with you if they want to find out more about what you do or if they wanted to work with you?
On my website's called life-change-coaching.co.uk. And on there, there's a link that you can click, which I offer a free 30-minute exploratory session on Zoom
Mm.
for you just to tell me what's going on for you, what's the main issue that you're struggling with and you need help with. And I'll tell you about me and what I do and the packages I offer, and see if coaching's right for you. Sometimes it's not right for everybody, but most of the time it is. And I'm available just to help and talk out, and give you some suggestions.
Are you active on any social media platforms?
I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram
Okay, I can
as
link
well.
all of her contact in the show notes. So if you're listening, you'll have to go to the website that goes with the audio because lately they haven't been posting the notes for me, but it will link the website there. And if you're on YouTube, it'll be in the description of the video.
Yes. Okay.
So, well, Kathy, thank you for the wealth of information that you share with us. This has
Thank
been fun. I've enjoyed it. I hope that I was listening actively for you and that
you. Yes. You are.
the pressure
And
was on.
I really appreciate it, and I hope it's been useful to your listeners as well. I hope I've been able
I
to
think so.
help.
Yeah, I'd love to hear some feedback from those of you that are listening. If you found a
Yes.
piece that you found valuable and want to try out, leave us a note in the comments or send us an email. Don't forget to sign up for the Water Prairie newsletter for updates on what's happening at Water Prairie, special promo codes available for our Etsy shop, and updates on our Amazon bookshelf. You can sign up at waterprairie.com/newsletter. Thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you next week.